disclaimer, I'm a little under the weather, so just bear with me in case I choke off. But I'm pretty high in Buckley, so I think it should be good. We're really funny and entertaining. Hi, my name is Hira. I work at the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. We're Canada's national public broadcaster. How many of you are familiar with CBC? All right, wow, okay, that's great, thank you. Great, so I was thinking about what does customer centricity means for us, and I'll be using the term audience and Canadians to refer to our customers, because that's how we internally think about them, because we're a public service organization, and we're in the business of serving Canadians, because we're accountable to them. So the purpose of CBC's ecosystem, there we go. So the purpose of CBC's ecosystem is to deliver on our public service mandate, which is to inform, entertain, and enlighten Canadians. And we do that because we're accountable to Canadians in terms of the purpose that we serve. We're supposed to be the source of objectivity and truth, and connect the country coast to coast. So that's the kind of vision that we're trying to drive towards. How Canadians interact with us is through a variety of different platforms. So of course, TV and radio that we're all kind of familiar with. Of course, the web, apps, we're on social platforms, connected TVs, newsletters, we have help center, voice assistants, community events, smart watch, we're everywhere. And this is just a glimpse of it. So we're on a variety of different platforms that Canadians interact with us. In order to develop a deeper relationship with them, we need to be serving in the most appropriate way possible on each of these different platforms. And what our research has shown is that Canadians are platform agnostic. They don't really care how or where they interact with us. What they are really interested in is, am I being served well? And what kind of relationship do I have with CBC? So it really comes down to is how do we connect with them on a personal level? So those are all the different platforms that we're on. Now let's talk about all the different touch points, which are the avenues through which the Canadians interact with the CBC. So these are the platforms we talked about. Within all of these platforms, you have different touch points. So if you think about it, our ecosystem just is massive, right? We've got CBC radio, news, arts, sports, kids, television, entertainment, music, comedy, and it keeps going. So we have a lot of different sub-brands, and those are the touch points through which Canadians interact with us. And digital is just a slice of it. So just to paint a picture of how massive our ecosystem is and how people are interacting with us. And what's challenging is that how do you possibly serve an entire nation, right? And that's what we're trying to always learn. So when we think of connectivity, our content is what connects us to our audience, right? When we know our audience doesn't really think about platform, how we're serving them is through the content that we create. So in terms of content and the connectivity that around it, we have to think about, first of all, where does the content come from? How do we plan that content? Well, it's about what do Canadians want, need, and expect from CBC? What kind of content should we be creating to deliver on our public service mandate? Then we have to think about how do we actually create that content? And that is about what is the best way to tell that story to Canadians? It's great we have an idea, we know what exactly Canadians want, but what are the mechanisms through which we tell that tell that story in the most effective way possible? Then we have to think about how do we manage that content? Where does it live internally? How is it organized? How does the entire organization that is meant to serve the entire country manage and coordinate all this content that we're creating on a daily basis? And we're creating this content from across the country. So we've got our bureaus in Ottawa, and Toronto, and Montreal, but then we're also in different regions as well. And then we have to think about how do we distribute this content? Where is this going to live? And so where is this content going to be available to Canadians? And then how do Canadians discover this content? And then how do they actually consume it? So what is the actual experience of actually absorbing this content? Is it a video? But what does that video experience look like? Is it a news article? What does that article experience look like? Is it a live blog? What does that feel like? Is it photos? And is it comments? You know, user-generated content is also content that we create, that we support. So all these different ways we have to think about what is the actual experience of finally when the content is in the hands of our audience, how do they actually absorb it and make the most of it so that the intentions that we had when we were planning it are actually fulfilled. And then we have to think about archiving our content. How do we make sure that we store this content in a way that is always accessible and available to Canadians? Because it is for them. And it's also a shared history that we're building together, right? And there's a whole lot of other decisions that I didn't really want to bring it up, But those are also very critical, like content licensing. How do we go and license off to other organizations who also want access to CBC's content? There's measurement, which is a huge part of assessing and validating some of the themes that came up when Brittany was talking about how a lot of us talk about customer centricity. How do we go evaluate the worthiness of the content? Did it do what we intended for it to do? But those are the kind of key elements that we have to think about, and that's what connectivity means to us, right? And that's what it means being customer-centric, is that all the organization, whether or not they see themselves serving Canadians directly, are all part of one aspect or the other. So somebody who's working down deep in archives and libraries, categorizing and organizing our content, they are actively involved in how we shape and structure the content that's available to Canadians. And we have to think about how do we make sure that it's future-proof and it's still available, right? Someone who's focusing on how do we distribute it to our off-platforms, like different news aggregators that people use on a daily basis, that they still know this great content's coming from CBC, but it's there where they want them. So Google News, things like that. So they might not feel directly involved in delivering customer experience, but they actually are, and that's what connectivity feels like. Making sure everyone who's part of the organization understands that how we're actually laddering up to that intended outcome that we want, and how do we actually deliver on that public service mandate. So let's talk a little bit about why this matters and why this connectivity matters. And this quote really resonates with me, is that services that are created in silos are actually experienced in bits. And that's what we don't want, right? Is that we want people to have a very seamless experience, way of experiencing CBC. So meet Sabrina. This is her Olympics experience. So she was hanging out with some friends and at a restaurant when a commercial came on promoting CBC's Olympic broadcast. And one of her friends is like, "Are you going to watch the Olympics?" And she's like, "Probably not. Maybe the opening ceremonies. Those are always kind of fun." So we already know that she's not really that interested right from the beginning, right? Then her friend's like, "Well, when is it?" "It's tomorrow." "Oh, that's too bad. I'm in New York for the next couple of days, so I guess I'll miss it." "That's too bad." She was scrolling through her Facebook and noticed an article by CBC that said, "Canadians can take the games anywhere with free CBC Olympics app." She's like, "Oh, sweet. Okay, that's kind of cool." So she downloaded the app, and then she went off to her trip. And then she found the live stream, so finally when she had some time to watch the opening ceremony when it was about to be aired, she found the live stream for the opening ceremony, and then she watched 2 ads, and then she got to the error. "You're experiencing technical difficulties." So she was kind of met with this unmet expectation that the marketing message that she saw on the Facebook article was that she could see it anywhere, but it didn't mention that the article itself was geofenced and she can't access it. So she reached out to CBC on Twitter and said, "Hey, CBC, why can't I watch the opening ceremonies? My app says technical difficulties. Can you please help?" "Hi, Sabrina, we're sorry. Let's figure this out. Where are you located?" "I'm on a work trip in New York." "Oops, sorry, Sabrina. Live stream is only available in Canada." So that was one of the pain points she experienced, right? She wasn't aware that streaming was only available in Canada, so there was a bit of mixed messaging that she received. Then she's like, "Well, maybe that's kind of sucks, but I guess I'll watch it when I get home, Maybe still interested." So you're also kind of half interested by now, right? So she was expecting to find the opening ceremonies to be available on demand whenever she wanted at that point. So a few days later, she was at home, back in Toronto, and decided to play the opening ceremonies in the background while she cooked dinner. And she's like, "Why can't I find it? Now this is really frustrating." So she had some difficulties finding it on the CBC Olympic website. She couldn't find it on that site. She's like, okay, somehow she landed on our CBC Help Center and discovered that the International Olympics Committee restricts how long the full video of the opening ceremony is available, and the article suggested that she goes to check out the highlights. She's like, "Well, wish I knew that earlier, that sucks." So she wasn't aware that the opening ceremonies are only available for 2 days after the actual event happens, and you can no longer find it. At this point, she's like, "Well, I give up." So she had some trouble finding the highlights video. She didn't want to watch the ads anymore, and she's like, "No, this is not worth the trouble. I just don't really care." So a little bit that relationship that she had with the person was tarnished, right? So that's the journey that she went through. She went through, touched a few different platforms in this quest to watch the opening ceremonies. She felt a lot of different emotions, and she was thinking a lot of different things, right? Like first she's like, "Yeah, maybe I'll watch it," to "I give up," down to she was doing a lot of different actions that were kind of signals in terms of how she was moving progressing through the journey. So to the audience layer, it really doesn't matter. They want where they came from, right? But everything that happens underneath in terms of content planning, creation, management, distribution, discovery, consumption, all those layers have to work together. And that's where they have to think about the audience at first. So what appears to them is a clear journey, but really everything underneath that happens to connect it all together and deliver on that very audience-centric experience, to deliver on our public service mandate is incredibly critical. And that's what it means to us in Ireland. And that's pretty much it. So I guess that gives you a bit of context.